We turn now to a case in Florida involving a man who was released from prison after one judge said he was wrongly convicted of murder, only to have a higher court now threaten to send him back to prison. A taste of freedom that may be short-lived. A tearful homecoming. After 32 years in prison for a murder he says he did not commit, Crosley Green had been set free.
But the one good thing I can tell you about my feelings is that there's no hatred. And since I've been home, I've found a lot of love.
Green was convicted in 1990 of the murder of 22-year-old Charles Chip Flynn, based on the testimony of Flynn's girlfriend.
The investigators believed a scared teenage story that there was a black guy involved in what may have been a tragic accident, but there was no black guy.
The girlfriend picked out Green from this police photo spread. He was the one on the middle of the top row.
Crosley's picture was in what prosecutors and police officers called the bullseye. It was smaller, it was darker, it stuck out like a sore thumb. And so if someone was going to pick the black guy, he was the blackest guy. It was surrounded by 5 light-skinned African-American men that looked nothing like him.
But a federal judge ruled last year that Green did not get a fair trial back in 1990, that the prosecution withheld key evidence from the defense that would have pointed to the girlfriend.
So you really think the girlfriend just made up a story about a, quote, some black guy?
Yes. Not only do I think that, but the first police officers on the scene believe that as well, and told the prosecutors and all the investigators that there wasn't any black guy and that the girl did it. And even though this was taken down in notes and memorialized, those notes were never turned over to the defense.
Crosley Green celebrated with his family. One of his first requests was to have ice cream with his lawyers. But the celebration may have been premature. The ruling overturning his conviction was itself overturned by the 11th Circuit Federal Court of Appeals. So now, Crosley Green could be sent back to prison.
And we're joined now by Crosley Green. Mr. Green, thank you so much for being here. This is quite an ordeal for you, more than a year now, a taste of freedom, but the prospect that you may have to go back to prison.
First and foremost, thank you for doing this with me. Well, yes, it's convenient. It's a convenient thing where it's a possibility I could go back to prison.
And how do you approach that? How do you think about that, having spent 3 decades behind bars?
I don't think about it. I don't think about nothing but the good Lord above. The faith I have and the things that I've accomplished since I've been home with families, friends, co-workers, and stuff like that. I don't have time to think about what is what. I just got to keep moving forward.
Will you keep your faith even if you are ordered back to prison?
There's no way I'm going to take my faith and just drop it, throw it out the door, anything like that. I made it this far. I just know I'm going to make it.
Green's legal team is now launching a public campaign to highlight his plight.
It is a tragedy. And it's, these are cases that are generally referred to as the racial hoax cases, where something happens and, they say a black guy did it and the black guy gets convicted. Well, that's exactly what happened here. And it is a tragedy. And we're hopeful that, eventually justice will be served and the 11th Circuit will review this case and rule that prosecutors can't withhold evidence of innocence. That's what this case is all about. And it's really important. You mentioned the South. You're right. The 11th Circuit covers the Deep South. It is even more important for prosecutors to have clear lines of what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do under the Constitution. And that's what's so important about this case.
There were 3 witnesses who said that your client, Mr. Green, confessed to the murder.
Yes, yes, that is unfortunately true. And all three of them have recanted that testimony. And that's important. And the courts often look with disdain on recanted testimony. But this case is a little bit different because the Brevard County Prosecutor's Office, before they prosecuted Mr. Green, prosecuted 3 other people with similar jailhouse confessions. And those 3 other people were later exonerated. Those jailhouse confessions were demonstrated to be just as false as the jailhouse confessions that contributed to Mr. Green's conviction.
Among those stepping forward to support Crosley Green is one of the police officers from the original investigation, Diane Clark.
When I put a badge on, I took an oath to serve and protect the community, and that meant all community. In this particular case with Crosley Green, the truth is hidden. And to me, that's a travesty of justice. He spent half his life in prison for something that I don't believe he did. And I hope the wrong can be righted.
You're not angry at the prosecutors who withheld evidence that might have exonerated you?
No. I'm not angry whatsoever. I'm not even much angry at Kim Hiller. I'm not even much angry at stuff that has happened that I'm not going to speak about during the case and stuff like that. But I look back at it, and there was reasons some things had happened, for protection-wise or something like that. You know what I'm saying? That went against me. But I'm not angry.
Let me ask you, how do you account for your client's continued hope and optimism in the face of what appears to be such a miscarriage of justice?
My client is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. Things he has faced that would destroy most humans, he just has overcome based entirely on his faith in God. And it's a beautiful thing. It's inspirational. To me, it's inspirational to my entire legal team.
So you still have hope?
Yes, I got great hope. Like I said, I got more faith than anything. I don't sit around and grumble and nothing like that. When my family come around, man, they ask me this or ask me that. Listen, I ain't got time for that. I ain't thinking about that. I'm here with y'all now. I'm hoping to stay here with y'all forever.
A spokesperson for the prosecutor's office in Brevard County, Florida, told us none of the original prosecutors are still working there and pointed us to the ruling of the 11th Circuit Court, which said the evidence of Crosley Green's guilt was, quote, compelling. Up next, this week's winners and losers in the media. See if you agree with the choices made by the editors of Mediaite. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. Time now for this week's winners and losers in the media, as chosen by the editors of Mediaite. And we're joined now by the editor-in-chief, Aidan McLaughlin. And Mediaite, of course, like the Law and Crime Trial Network, is part of the Dan Abrams Media Group. And Aidan, you've chosen as the winner this week the reporters at Politico with their big scoop on the draft of the Supreme Court ruling on Roe versus Wade, including Josh Gersten, who talked about how they verified the draft.
Well, we're very confident in the authenticity of this draft majority opinion, Rachel, both in the way that we obtained it and other information that we got that supports its authenticity and makes us believe that it is genuine. Now, of course, it's not a final opinion. It's a draft opinion. It was circulated in the court as a first draft by Justice Alito in February, dated February 10th. So it is possible there have been some changes since then, but it's our best understanding of at least where the court stood at that time.
So, Aidan, this was a major scoop, almost nothing like this ever before.
That's right. I've heard some people call it the scoop of the decade. It comes from Josh Gersten and Alexander Ward, both reporters at Politico. Josh Gersten was at ABC. He was a White House and a China correspondent before. Alexander Ward used to be at Vox. They both now work at Politico in pretty serious reporting positions. They were leaked this draft Supreme Court opinion, which would essentially overturn Roe v. Wade and end federal protections for abortion in the United States. It is a massive scoop. They wrote in the piece, I have the line here, that no draft decision in the modern history of the court has been disclosed publicly while a case is still pending. So it's a pretty shocking scoop all around. They also did a very good job of protecting their source. If you looked at the document that they published on Politico of this draft decision, there was no metadata that could trace the document back to their source. Now the Supreme Court, which has confirmed that this draft opinion is legitimate, has started an investigation to find out who the leaker is. So the story is going to continue, but it's a really phenomenal scoop from these two veteran reporters.
And is the big story the leak or the substance of the draft opinion?
I don't think it's the leak, that's for sure. That's certainly the bigger story for us at Mediaite because we cover the media and that's sort of our focus. Obviously, Roe v. Wade getting overturned is a much more significant news story, no matter whether or not Republican conservative pundits or politicians try to distract by really focusing on the leak and calling for prosecutions of the leaker, despite the fact that there doesn't really seem to be a crime directly associated with leaking a Supreme Court draft decision.
Right, and for this week's loser, you've chosen Maria Bartiromo of Fox News, who apparently was giving advance warning to the White House about questions she would ask Donald Trump.
Mr. President, you've said many times that this election was rigged, that there was much fraud, and the facts are on your side. Let's start there. Please go through the facts. Characterize what took place.
So questions in advance, Aidan?
Right. So that interview Maria Bartiromo conducted with former President Donald Trump a few weeks after the 2020 election, which he lost. And you'll notice there that she said that the facts are on his side about the election being rigged, which, of course, as we know now and as we knew then, was complete nonsense. Now, at the time, Mediaite managing editor Joe DiPaolo wrote a piece that said that that interview from Maria Bartiromo marked the end of her days as a journalist. She was once a revered journalist at Fox News. And now has sort of devolved into a conspiracy theorist. Now we know, via the texts that have been released through the January 6th Commission, that Maria Bartiromo was actually sending Mark Meadows, who was Trump's chief of staff at the time, questions in advance of the interview. She sent that question in particular to Meadows, and also with a request that that Meadows make sure that Trump does not go off on tangents in the interview. So you have an anchor at a news network not only sending questions to a subject before an interview, but also begging the subject's chief of staff to remain on point. So a really, really big journalistic failure all around there. And also shows the extent to which Fox News hosts do not trust Donald Trump to stay on message.
And to the notion that it's fair and balanced, the Fox slogan?
I mean, I think they wasted that a while ago. This is yet further evidence of how silly that is. And also, I should note that Fox News, the network, is not commenting on this. They've remained silent on these texts so far.
All right, Aidan McLaughlin, thank you so much for being with us here this evening. And thanks to all of you for joining us once again on Brian Ross Investigates. We'll see you back again next week right here.